so we've all been here. We fire up Guitar Pro to learn the latest song, and what we hear is this, the RSE engine. What we want to hear is this, a much more production-oriented sound. So the question is, how do we get these two much closer together? Stay tuned in this tutorial, and I'm going to teach you how to leverage Guitar Pro's MIDI feature into Logic, where you can then use your amp sims. And I'll also teach you how to get an actual DI method from MIDI to DI for these amp simulators to use. And if you're not a guitarist, you can also leverage this in the event that you wanted to take some of the tabs off the internet that are in Guitar Pro format and add them to your mix. But as guitarists, it's a much more pleasing sound to practice. And then we can still leverage all the advantages that Guitar Pro offers us, like speed ramping and other things. So let's dive in and figure out how this is done. So to start with, we have to fire up the audio MIDI setup. You can either get to that via Spotlight search, or you can find it in the utilities folder in the applications in your Finder. Once that's running, we're going to go up to Windows on the menu, and we're going to click on Show MIDI Studio. This is the key. We're going to get into this thing called an IAC driver. It's effectively kind of this loop back driver. I don't know the nuances of it, but that's what it does. All right, so once we open that, we're going to see up here IAC driver. Now, I don't love that name. I like to have something a little bit shorter because we're going to see later inside of Guitar Pro and inside of Logic, that name is going to follow with us. So I'm just going to call this MIDI, I don't know, let's call it MIDI L. So we have MIDI looper. We could probably come up with something much more fancy and shorter is better in this case. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring this device online. So this is going to allow us to essentially select this inside of our interfaces. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a port. We're going to rename this port on this one. I'm going to call it, because in my example, I'm going to use 3 guitars. And the cool part about this is you can create a guitar left, a guitar right. You can create some harmonies, some other things that you can do there. So I'm going to call this Guitar 1. Okay, and the next one I'm going to do, I'm going to add, and I'm going to call this one Guitar 2. And in my case, because like I said, I've got 3 guitars, I'm going to do Guitar 3. Now, I could go ahead while I'm in here, because I could use this later, and I could say bass, and let's just add a couple more, and I'm going to say this one I'm going to do is drum. In the event that I want to bring any kind of drums in from Guitar Pro, and then this last one I'm going to do here, I'm just going to do a metronome. Okay, now that we've got the metronome in there, we're going to just click apply. Okay, and we're going to see later how this kind of transpires. Cool. We can close this all out now. All right, so now we're in Guitar Pro. And what we're going to find is in Guitar Pro, on the track side of it, if we go into MIDI, you're going to see here that we don't really have anything showing up. That's because we have to reinitialize Guitar Pro. So we're going to go ahead and kill it. We won't save this, just so we start where we were at. All right, we're going to start up Guitar Pro again. Okay, so now we've got the Guitar Pro started back up. We're going to have to go in and define what we just created inside of the MIDI Studio. So go to Guitar Pro Preferences, go to MIDI if you're not already on that. And we're going to select here port 1. So port 1, we're going to want to be Guitar 1. And you can see this MIDI L. That's the part I was talking about. Port 2 is Guitar 2. Port 3 is Guitar 3. And then we're going to say, well, let's put the metronome on port 4. Okay? Once that's done, we'll close that. Now, we're going to do one other quick thing. I've got 3 guitar tracks here, but let's just go up quickly and just do sound and then switch all tracks to MIDI. Okay? Now, when we go into each one of these, as we select it, what we're going to find is over here on the right-hand side, we want to go to the track tab. Once we're in the track tab, we can go down here and we can select the guitar that's appropriate. In this case, Guitar 1. And then we'll go to this next one. We'll select Guitar 2. And then this last one, we'll select Guitar 3. Okay, as far as Guitar Pro, that's done. We're ready to go at this point. Now, if we play this, unfortunately, we're not going to get a whole lot. So we can see here, even if we go back to this portion of the track, while we're playing, it's playing, but there's nothing going on. That's because we now have to take the outbound MIDI from Guitar Pro and we have to get it into the DAW. All All right, so switching over to Logic. Let's go into Logic. Now I've got a project set up here. It's just one that I've been working on. You can just start up new. You can do whatever you want. I'm going to start here because it's a good starting point for me. So I'm going to go into a sum bus. You don't have to do this. You can just create a new track. So I could either right click and create a track here, or I could go up to the track and create a new track here. So my workflow is I right click and I'm going to do a new software instrument track. Okay, we're going to find that does not put me in the summing group, as unfortunate as it is. I'm going to drag that up there just because I want to be able to inherit some things that I've got set up. All right, so here it is. I've got a software instrument track. It's got a piano on there, which isn't going to do me a whole bunch of good. And I've got a couple outputs on buses. Okay, so I'm going to rename this. I'm going to just say this is Guitar Pro, Guitar 1, MIDI. Okay, now I'm going to go down here. This is where if we now were to play this, and let's just do this real quick. We'll go into Guitar Pro again, and let's play. Okay, so next up we want to, so that was just the piano playing through there. Now the reason it sounded distorted is I have a couple of things on here in the channel. If I were to play that again now, just as a piano, and there it is. Okay. So we don't have a piano. I'm just going to change this icon real quick out because I want it to be a guitar. Okay. Now what I want to do is say, okay, I've got to get a DI in here. How do I get a DI in? Because that's not going to work. And there are no, that I know of, no defaults in Apple. So I'm going to use an AU instrument or just an instrument that's been installed as a plugin. And I'm going to use Odin II. And Odin II is going to give me this ability to get a DI. So now if we do that, we have Odin II selected. We have the inputs, which we're going to change one thing really, really quickly, just so we don't get crossover, is on this track here where it says track. We want to tree that out if it's not already treed out. If you don't have the informational, you can just pull this in and do the informational here. We're going to do MIDI input, and we're just going to come down here and do Guitar 1. Okay. Now we're going to go back over to Guitar Pro and play. Okay, great. Now we got a DI. Now we're set up really for the most part. I'm going to turn these buses off because I don't need them at this point. That's a whole different topic. So we're playing through this. Now if I were to turn back on my amp sim and my EQ and go back into Guitar Pro, play it again. Let's just loop this part right here. Okay, I was trying to get it on a palm mute there so it wouldn't ring out. That's going on right there. So now we've set up this guitar as Guitar 1. So that's working perfectly. Now let's say we wanted to bring that Guitar 2 in. We would do it here. So let's just create, again, another new software track. We're going to drag this into my summing group. Again, not required if you're not using a summing. And I'm going to say, okay, this one is going to be Guitar Pro, Guitar 2 MIDI. And again, I'm going to go over here on this track and I'm going to say Guitar 2. And I'm going to get rid of the piano. I'm going to go to Odin. Okay, and I'm going to go to Guitar 2 here for my DI. And in my lead channel, I am going to turn off my processing or my effects. Now it's going to play this. We're going to go to Guitar 2. We're going to highlight this section. Now this is Guitar 2 playing. What that sounds to me like, I would have to play this on a regular guitar to be sure, but it sounds like it's, and I've seen Guitar Pro do this where it's transitioning that kind of some semitones down. But we're going to leave it as it is right now, just from the tuning standpoint of what it's doing. It'll match. Okay, so now back up to get the effects. So now we've got Guitar 1, it's playing through the effects. Now we've got a Guitar 2, and we can turn these on. And now here's what we get. Okay, awesome. So now, in order for us to hear both of these, I'm going to solo both of them. I'm going to monitor both of them. And now we're going to be able to hear everything going on with both of these tracks. So if we were to highlight this section, go to guitar 1, this is the section this is happening, and now we'll hear them both. Okay, so that's how you do it. Now, I'm not saying that sounds great specifically, but you can see the value of how that would work out if you were to have multiple things going on, including a bass and some other stuff that you could tab out. So there it is. That's how to get MIDI from Guitar Pro into Logic. Hopefully it's helpful.